Awesome. Well, welcome everybody. We, as 3Cloud, we were always trying to give back to our community and to our customers and the people we work with and for. And this time we thought we'd do something different, and that is to bring together to you the people who are leading the day-to-day efforts in our clients, and also managing our crews, our delivery crews that are out and about. One of the things I think is really unique about consulting in general is we see a lot. We see a lot of different customers, a lot of different industries. We see a lot of different trends, and that's allows us to have a little bit of a unique lens. So today we've got from 3Cloud our delivery directors in our major areas, and I'm gonna have them introduce themselves in a second here. But the goal of this session is we're gonna look at 2020, what we saw in 2020, and then we're gonna more importantly look forward to 2021. What are those trends that we're expecting? What are we having our people ramp up on? So it should be a fun, engaging conversation. If you have any questions for our panel at any time, make sure you pop that question in. We're gonna take a pause every once in a while to take a deep breath. So guys, I'm gonna have you introduce yourself. You can just give your name, what domain you lead, and maybe how many years you've been in the industry. So we'll start with Noel.
Thank you, Jeff. Noel. I've been focused on DevOps. I lead the DevOps practice here at 3Cloud, and I've been focused on DevOps for the last 10+ years. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, great to have you on, Noel. How about Shabir?
Yes, hey, Shabir Mala, work as a practice director here in 3Cloud. Again, data analytics and 20 years worth of experience.
Beautiful. All right, Mr. Steve Hughes. We can't hear you if you're talking, Steve. Still no. We'll skip you. How about Chris or Nick? Are either of you guys on?
Yeah, Chris Johnson, practice director of at Modernization here. I have a mix of responsibilities. I came in and joined the 3Cloud from Applied Cloud Systems, where previously I was responsible for custom application development, the Dynamics and Power Platform, data and AI as well. My role, thankfully, has been limited there because I'm working with good folks like Shabir, Steve, and Noel. So I have about over 20-some years total experience. So thank you.
Beautiful. Thanks for joining us, Chris. How about Nick?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. Apologies for not being able to share my video. Something's off with my camera this morning. But thanks, everybody, for joining. I'm Nick Altoff, as I said. I'm a practice director along with Chris Johnson on the application modernization team. I've been working in the custom development space on the Microsoft stack for over 20 years and in Azure for more than the last 6. So here at 3Cloud, my team is responsible for guiding our clients through the application modernization and innovation journey into Azure.
Beautiful. Well, welcome, Nick. Thanks for taking the time. And Steve, how are we doing there?
Hey, can you hear me now? That's the question.
Yeah, all good.
There we go.
Perfect.
Steve Hughes. I am also a practice director here at 3Cloud, and I've been doing consulting and data work for 20+ years, which makes me feel really old now. Thanks for making that happen, Jeff.
Anything I can do to make you appreciate where we are.
It's great.
All right, guys. So let's start off with a kind of a broad-based question. I think there's no doubt that 2020 was a unique year. I'd love to hear, we'll start with the application development guys, Chris and Nick. What were some of those things that you saw in 2020 as kind of a major trend that had the COVID experience not happened, you probably wouldn't have seen?
Nick, I'll let you go first because I know some of the topics that you're going to cover, and then I'm going to chime in and have some additional details. That's okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the things that we saw was a lot in the chatbot area around the COVID pieces. A lot of folks wanted to roll out something where they could have the people, whether it be in their schools or their organizations, log in or talk with the chatbot and say, hey, do I have COVID? What should I do? Right? So simple walkthrough is, hey, how are you feeling today? Have you been in close contact with somebody, et cetera, those sorts of things. And what that does is it provided a lot of like good feeling. Hey, I'm going to go and talk to this chatbot, and I'm going to know what the school's position is on how I'm feeling and what I should be doing. And there wasn't a lot of ambiguity around, well, I've got the sniffles, but I've been, what should I be doing? So that really allowed for a lot of safety and things there. And with the chatbot experience, of course, right, you don't need people responding to that. You don't need people answering the phone or typing on the other side. 90% of that can be taken care of, just with some code. And Microsoft rolled out some neat templates and things like that too, that definitely helped out in that area. And then we would take that and customize that to fit, specific clients' needs. So definitely saw a lot in the chatbot area, especially around the COVID stuff.
Yeah, and I'll absolutely back up Nick on that. Prior to the acquisition, we saw a lot of that, and then once I joined 3Cloud formally, it continued on. Though some institutions didn't like the usability of the chatbot, even if they thought they wanted a chatbot. The experience was, funny enough, too chatty. So that's where the Power Platform would come into play, and they just wanted to be able to have one single form with all the questions. These are my symptoms, whether you're symptomatic or not, what you've been doing travel-wise, all those types of things. Ask all the questions, submit it once, move on. So that was it was interesting to see the preference from customer to customer vary from wanting to have that pure chat experience versus the Power Platform. And then from a technical perspective, I'll throw this out there for those that would be interested in the chatbot, the health bot specifically from Microsoft, because it is so dynamic, it can make the analytics a little more challenging than something like the Power Platform, where you're using the common data model, or what's now known as Dataverse, to build your model and build reports off of. So just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you. Sorry, Nick.
That's good stuff. So you mentioned, from a technology perspective, you mentioned Power Apps. Nick, from your side, is that the platform that you've seen most often used with the chatbot, or have you seen other requests come in for other technologies?
Yeah, I would say that Power Platform is a good way to get that out there quickly. But the nice part with the chatbots is that it's got several different channels where we can push things out to. So, for example, it's kind of a build once and deploy everywhere, if you will, or make available everywhere. So, you can put it on your website if you want to. There's some nice plugins there. You can include it in a Teams channel if that's fitting for your enterprise. Facebook is another thing you can do. So lots of different channels there, kind of depending on what was a good fit for the people that we're working with. We're able to, again, kind of build that model quickly and then say, well, where do you want it to be? Here? Okay, give us a half hour. Click, 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 done. Right, sort of situation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really nice benefit that you're referring to there, Nick, because with the Power App, if you build an app, every user has to be licensed. So it's really only in that case beneficial to schools and corporations that have a significant investment in the Power Platform and Power Apps to license all the users. So it's a little different than the chatbot.
So Noel, from a DevOps perspective, with a lot of us who are in technology, we're used to, working remote and, collaborating remotely, but for some people that wasn't the case. What have you seen from a DevOps perspective in 2020 that was accelerated, if you will?
Yeah, many organizations are on the DevOps journey, implementing DevOps transformations, and those became more relevant in the year 2020 with the COVID crisis. With agile teams, typically agile and DevOps go hand in hand. So agile, one of the tenets of that is that you work co-located. And as we know, in COVID, with COVID-19, we couldn't do that. So how do we enable that same cohesiveness with the team and yet do it remotely. So DevOps becomes very critical because with the automation that it enables, as well as the ability to enable self-service capabilities, for example, how do you provision your environments for the dev and the QA functions? So once you implement DevOps and be able to, with a single click, for example, enable your teams to be able to provision environments, you solve that problem. And the other thing too is with CI/CD, you build in a lot of the control you typically have when you're co-located into the automation. So you have gates and stuff like that that can facilitate the same quality that you would working in a co-located environment. So DevOps efforts definitely have sped up. We found that a lot of organizations who may have been putting off the DevOps transformation decide that it's now front and center and it has a priority. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I want to mention though is it's more than just a tool set, it's how we work together cohesively. And the culture aspect, the people part of the DevOps, which includes people, process, and the tool, the product, the people part of it has become even more relevant because of the new culture and the way we work together. How do we facilitate those interactions and the collaboration? Mm-hmm. So what we have seen with our clients here is that we do a lot of DevOps transformations. We do DevOps jump starts, which take stock of where the client currently is and look at how they need to change to move to a DevOps model of working.
Mm-hmm. So Noel, what tool sets are you typically working with for companies that are doing that transition and improvement?
That's a great question, Jeff. There are a number of tool sets that organizations can use to facilitate DevOps. As an Azure organization, when we move to Azure, we facilitate using Azure DevOps. So depending on where the organization is moving from, let's say they're moving from TFS or from other tools, other tool systems to Azure DevOps, we facilitate the migration and the implementation of Azure DevOps. Now with Microsoft's recent acquisition of GitHub in 2018, we're also facilitating the migration to GitHub. And figuring out the right time, and the tool set has become critical because you want to make sure that you have an easy migration path from what you're moving into now to Azure DevOps and then to GitHub Enterprise Cloud when the time is right. So these are generally the tool sets that are part of the Microsoft stack that facilitates CI/CD, but there are a number of third-party tools that we plug into that space to enable the quality and the controls that we're looking for static code analysis, tools like Sonar Cloud, and then Veracode for security scanning, and a number of other third-party tools that we build into the process.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned something that's really one of the things that I think it affects all of us is the people aspect of what we do. Yeah. What have you seen from a people aspect, culture shifts, maybe because of the situation we're in? I think you have a front row seat to that. Anything that struck you from a human side, if you will, from the DevOps world this year?
Well, one key thing is how business and IT interact. So you don't have the ability now to get into a room and whiteboard and figure out what you're trying to accomplish. So how do you facilitate that? One of the ways we do that is we enable that with using boards in Azure DevOps so that business can participate in what the user story is. And then we have a refinement session when we collaborate and figure out, you've asked for an apple, am I delivering a pear? I mean, how do we align on what you want, right? And then, so can we develop a prototype and show you what we have, a wireframe, so you can confirm what we want. So the collaboration starts right at that point so that when you deliver, you're delivering exactly what's been asked for. That's one aspect of it, from the business to the app dev. Then from the dev side to ops, that's another cultural change. We can't just develop and throw over the fence to ops. We need to make sure that everything in between, what we call non-functional requirements, are adequately addressed. So we want to shift those left into the development process. So those require cultural change in how they work because they're not used to doing that before. They were used to working in silos.
Yeah.
So DevOps seeks to break down those silos and show how the teams need to work together.
Beautiful. So I want to switch over to the data guys. I think leading up to 2020, we were seeing this kind of trickle of people having old hardware that was phasing out. Let's move our data centers to the cloud. From a data perspective, what did we see in 2020 that was maybe a little bit off schedule, if you will.
So who goes first, me or Shabir? That's the question.
Let's go with you, Steve, since you're talking.
As I started talking, I'll take it first. I've been thinking through kind of that impact that we saw in the data world. And in particular, we saw it in a number of customers who, come the end of March, may have been working with us on one type of project and immediately had C-level requests come down to us to basically, how is COVID impacting our business? And when that one question highlighted their inability to answer that question, incurred a lot of work for us, as and we were already in place consulting, like, hey, we need to shift gears. We understand. We actually published a showcase on supply chain impact. People didn't understand how important it was to really have time-sensitive data, the relative impact, and then to see that impact worldwide across their entire organization. What is it going to mean? And what this forced everybody to do was, hey, those reports that we got sent to us in an email every day that were based on data from yesterday, and that was great. But I now need to know something different. And they realized that their data state and their ability to visualize and understand their data was not up to par. They could not pivot and react to that data. I don't care how good you are at dumping data into a spreadsheet and analyzing it in Excel, you still have to wait for the data to get there. You have to, if you have a change in your request, what does it mean? What we saw a lot of in this new environment was people understanding the importance of tools and visualizations that allowed them flexible views of their data in a quick fashion, allowing them to actually use these tools that we as BI folks are like, you should be in Power BI, you should be in some of the other tools because it helps you respond. And they're like, yeah, whatever, that's a pretty picture, just give it to me in Excel. That we see changing. And a part of it is because people understood that they could all of a sudden ask questions of a good solution that has been built out to bring their data and integrate it together. More importantly, tools like Power BI and could bring it together quickly. Then we see people making those migration efforts coming as well, going, all right, I can't get into that system. How do I get to make that data available? Then you start dealing with a lot of different other tools that have come to market in really in the last few months, not necessarily in response to COVID, but we're already like on Microsoft's roadmap. I think about SQL 2019 even, that ability to start really becoming a data virtualization layer. It was already in place and now can be leveraged. We see that happening with data lake technologies. How fast can I make data available? People all of a sudden were able to step back and go, these are really important. And we do need to take this seriously. We've been doing our business the same way for the last 25 years. We can't do that anymore. We have to be able to react to something like a global pandemic, which is impacting our business at a very real way. So that's kind of where I saw the biggest impact immediately in the early parts of the pandemic.
Yeah, and to add to Steve's point, so Steve did mention about the C-level people talking about information and all that stuff. But again, on the other side of the spectrum, also the people the employees in the company, we've seen a good sort of a need for the transparency of workforce data. So giving that information, obviously every one of us has been working from home remote. We do not have too much of sort of face-to-face interaction, going in the office, chatting over the coffee type of things, right? So having that information sort of shared across the company, like how Steve mentioned Power BI, hey, I need quick information. I can do some slicing, dicing, and also not about just the company data, but they were also looking for some outside data. So they want to see, hey, what are other what is happening in the world, with the COVID stuff, with the performances of all the businesses, and how is that impacting my company? Am I doing better, or should I need to improve? What can I learn from that information? So that information transparency across the board, all the way from the C-level to the workforce, everybody was asking for that, and that sort of gave us that opportunity to enhance and get in and build those analytics platforms and all modernize structures, platforms in the cloud.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So before Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Chris.
I was going to say, Jeff, yeah, don't pigeonhole me as just a software guy. Yeah, I got data too, man. But I just wanted to say, based on what the guys had said, it really ties in nicely with what I saw starting in 2019, but then it really took off in 2020. The emphasis on the semantic data layer and merging from heterogeneous heterogeneous data sources to homogeneous. I've got all this data, but now with Azure and it's cost effective. I don't have to go to a server and set it up and have my IT guy set this up. And how do I get these systems to talk? With Azure, it's quick, it's easy to click some buttons, get something going. Now, obviously, you're not going to have an enterprise solution immediately, but what was theoretical in prior years, and there are popular books. Now it's really happening, and there's a lot of demand for it. People have the data, they want to make it actionable, and then build really cool visualizations on top. So 2020 really for me, and then COVID reinforced that because people needed their data. It really emphasized that semantic data layer for ease of access to the data and high performance to their data.
That's good stuff. We had a couple of questions come in. If you have questions as we're talking through, please put them in the questions. We're happy to answer those. Noel, for you, there was one that came through asking, what percentage of firms are aggressively adopting DevOps from your perspective?
Well, I don't know that I have a number. If you look at it from the microcosm of what the clients that we work with, it's north of 50%, and they've prioritized it. So they've always been doing something in DevOps, but now based on the pandemic, we've changed priorities and sped that up. One of the big things that's come into play is security. So when we do DevOps, we implicitly do DevSecOps. So for those who are not familiar with the term, it's shifting security left. It's not an afterthought that's done after you've deployed your application. How do you build security into your whole process? So DevSecOps enables that. So that one of the things that our clients have been asking for, and we've seen the trend is towards building security into the DevOps process. And that's actually spurred the increase of DevOps adoption, especially for regulatory compliance. They're failing their audits. And so they have to answer to the auditors, how are we protecting our application? Are we allowing vulnerabilities to come in? Are we protecting our open source components that we allow our developers to pull from maven.org or NuGet.org? So it's all of a sudden it's increased. I don't have an exact number, but it's definitely higher than it was before.
Beautiful. So the other question we have is for the data guys. The question really is, what are we seeing as the most popular Azure services that are being used for data?
Yes. Oh wait, that's not the answer.
All the above.
All the above. The data services available in Azure to all of us is pretty expansive. As far as what we see the most of, I mean, realistically, we see a lot of Azure SQL database being used, and frankly, still a lot of SQL on VMs. Let's be realistic. Those are two, from a database platform standpoint, those are two of the biggest drivers. Now, a lot of the work we do, because we're in BI and data warehousing, we do see some work with Synapse. The GA announcement of Synapse and the workspace it has, I think will actually, I know we're not talking about 2021 impact yet, Jeff, but I do believe that workspace and that environment alone will change how we see Azure being used for data services in next year, without a doubt, because it brings together all the disparate pieces and trying to get us in a single workspace, a single pane of glass to work with. That's a huge change. As far as other services, Data Factory is easy entry. People use Data Factory, they bring it in, from an ETL standpoint, and then they branch off from there. And that's what we see a lot of. We see the easy entry into the technologies that are available to us, whether it's the database technology, the ETL technology, even Lake or whatever. Frankly, if we're going to say the one biggest one, I'd say Lake is probably the biggest place for data right now, because everything else kind of flows through Lake. When we're all said and done, all of our solutions, the modern data estate, what we're trying to do and make it most available, whether you're trying to do analytics or cognitive, or if you're just trying to get reporting and basic things out, the Lake is the heart of a lot of what we see from an implementation standpoint. So you have that going on, and then after that, it's about what makes the most sense for your business. What's the most? Well, it depends who you're talking to. If you're talking to Microsoft, they're probably talking about how much Azure they're generating from that tool. In our experience, part of what we do, and Shabir and Chris, Jeff, you all can chime in on this, but what we do is help identify the right fit for you, your business need. So it's a loaded question, because what may look like a huge amount of usage in reality is because it may be a very small set of customers because they have a specific need. Whereas, so we were looking at all those pieces in there, and that doesn't even count for the fact that we haven't done a lot of open source. We expect to see open source continue to grow, whether it's MySQL, PostgreSQL, or other platforms that are also available in Azure as first-class citizens. We expect to see that continue to grow. So, what do we see as most? I would probably have to say data lake at the end of the day, because it seems like everything goes through data lake these days, frankly.
Yeah, definitely a foundation. So guys, yeah. Anybody have anything else for 2020? Because like we all kind of want to do, let's just wrap a nice little bow on 2020 and let's look forward to 2021. New and better times.
Yeah, I was going to say another thing that we saw in 2020 that I think is going to continue on with 2021 is whether it's corporate or higher ed, they're looking for self-service capabilities to deliver Azure resources and not use the Azure portal. There's a really nice benefit to this being governance. So you're able to limit what resources are created, the offering, so people aren't spinning up P11, whatever it might be, SQL database, turning it on and leaving to test things out, which I've in the past had a customer do. But that's something that really took off in 2020, and I think it's going to continue to take off. And at 3Cloud, we actually have had the opportunity to develop multiple solutions, and it's going to continue to expand. But right now we have a Servicenow Accelerator, so that Servicenow is the front end to your Azure resources. So if you have Servicenow within your organization, you can imagine going to Servicenow and saying, even I want a package. I want a SQL, an Azure SQL PaaS with an app service, and that could be wrapped up as a package, and it can be requested, created, and all of your organization's tagging and policies would be applied. So there's the ServiceNow connector. We've done total custom user interfaces interacting with the Azure services, as well as one other piece that's interesting is we're working on a Citrix-based solution. So between Azure, the desktops are housed within Azure, but instantiated from the Citrix cloud. So just wanted to throw that out there, that was a really big thing that we saw really take off in 2020, and then I expect to continue on in 2021.
Yeah, one thing just to add to Noel, your point, when you were talking about the DevOps CI/CD extensions and how people are starting with the automations, like putting more time towards automation side of things. So, obviously it was there in 2018-19, but one other thing which I have seen in 2020 is more of a cross-practice work. Right? People are looking for an end-to-end solution. So when we come in as a data folks, when we pitch a modern architecture with the cloud technologies, hey, people are talking about ADF, Lake stuff, which Steve talked about, but not only just finishing it up and storing that data and having those Power BIs as a reporting tool, but then how to expand that, bring the DevOps side of things, the automation. So it's now it's more of a cross-practice, end-to-end solution customers are looking for. So it's an opportunity for how can we integrate the app team with the dev team or the DevOps team with the data team type of things. Mm-hmm. So a lot of type of stuff's coming in.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up, Shabir. One of the key things is that we typically see DevOps as app dev folks and maybe infrastructure provisioning, but it's everything in between. So we have DevOps for data services. We have DevOps for Databricks, for Power BI, for all these different things that if there's any process that's manual that requires a database admin or a developer to go in and do something can be automated. We can build those into CI/CD pipelines. So we look at DevOps being holistic. It includes all these different domains, if you will, that need to be driven through a CI/CD process. So it needs to be looked at holistically. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a couple other really good questions that came in, but I do want to get to 2021. So I'm gonna pitch these out there. If we can do them succinctly, that'll be great. For everybody, talk about what I would consider these package type ML resources like cognitive services versus kind of old school Databricks / Python, building your own model, pros and cons.
Yeah, maybe I'll take a shot on this one, and then maybe Steve, you can add as well. So one thing which I see with the packaged solutions with the AI cognitive APIs and then the quick jumpstart type of solutions which are given by Microsoft, I think these what I've seen in customers is a lot of companies, when we talk to them, they are very much either early in their data journey, or they're sort of in the midstream. Yes, I have my information. I'm making some SSRS or Power BI reports, maybe some Excel pivoting type of things, right? Now, for those people, when they read all these blogs and technical stuff, and everybody gets excited with AI and ML, hey, can I do some predictive models? Can I do some forecasting? For them to invest that time and resources to build those type of things, it's a lot more things to take, 6 months, maybe a year, whatever it is time. Giving package solutions helps these companies or these clients accelerate much quicker. So they can get on to start using some of these services pre-packaged, throw their data into and get a sort of an output, which is something which Microsoft been investing for years and years and years, right? They have built these models based on what they have seen from other customers in the same vertical. That gives those people who are just starting their journey in the ML side of things or cognitive services type of things, that gives them a lot more boost, accelerator, and that helps them go to the next level. So that's one thing which I sort of have been seeing and customers have been pushing towards.
Yeah, the time savings and the level of resource necessary to implement the solution, Shabir. We've had, there was one cognitive services project where we did image processing, where we're looking at pictures and seeing if things during the manufacturing process are going awry. So we're able to very easily use the cognitive services to train the model so that it could detect when the manufacturing, the machine we'll just say gummed up and needed to be cleaned. And I was able to assign a fairly junior resource to that project and think about in the past, to your point, I mean, the training the model, the hardware and the software that would have to be deployed, it would be a huge investment where we were able to take some sample images, same day, spin up cognitive services, start training the model and start getting results same day.
Beautiful. So let's turn the calendar. We're in 2021. What are you all expecting? And the way I want to frame this is really two things. What are you expecting to hear from clients, A, and B, what are you telling your folks to ramp up on in terms of technology? And I'm just going to open it up to the group and let you guys riff.
So this is Nick. So I think in 2021, in general, if you want to think of where a lot of folks are as far as the cloud adoption, is we're past the early adoption phase for the most part on the cloud adoption, right? So people probably over the last 18 to 24 months that we're going to a cloud, that was sort of a hey, this is brand new, and we're going to give it a try and see how it goes. And the cloud adoption now is super mainstream. So we see a lot more, people that would be maybe reluctant initially to move into a cloud space, basically say, hey, this thing has to happen now. It's part of the directives that are coming down from up high, or it just makes logical sense. So, and a lot of that has to do, I think, with, Azure is continuing to roll out a ton of stuff to address the things that people were initially concerned about, typically around security. So people would say, hey, I don't want to go to the cloud, my data is in there and my information, and anybody can get into it, right? And that's it. So even from an application modernization standpoint, hey, I want to move my website, but I don't want anybody to be able to get to it. I want to lock it down. So there's a lot of really great things now that we're seeing in the Azure space, especially around VNet integrating of services. So you can go and roll your applications out in a modern way using things like app services and functions and those sorts of pieces, and not have that exposed to the outside world. So it really feels like an application that's being deployed on premise, except it's not on premise. And we're whitelisting IP addresses, or we're using things like ExpressRoute to lock that stuff down. So now you have your application completely secure, not on the public internet, that your folks can get to, but you don't have all of the time and energy of spinning up new servers and patching them and maintenance and all of the stuff that goes along with it. So we're definitely over the hump from an early adoption stage. Now we're sort of back into the mainstream. So think of it like a baseball game, right? We're probably maybe in the third or fourth inning versus the first or second inning now.
Well, I already said my piece, right? So as far as what I'm having folks ramp up on, that's a really relevant question, and it comes into play as an Azure data organization. That's what piece of what we do. Sorry, the rest of you guys. We do Azure data too. There we go. We are telling our teams that they have to broaden their skill set. The whole data estate that comes out with from Microsoft and everybody else and all the tooling that's there, it almost you have to be able to be more than just one thing. So you might have been a SQL DBA and it was great for years. Noel's already called out, we can automate some of those processes. So now you become a data DevOps engineer as well as a DBA, because you understand what's needed. Do you expand your skill set in that space? And so a lot of it's about expanding your skill set to absorb more things. If you're an ETL engineer and you've been working in SSIS or Informatica for your career, have you looked at Databricks? Because you have to understand that's a huge ETL player in the market, and it can be used in a lot of different places, but it's got a great cloud story. It's cloud scale. That's the next step for your career. You can't just live in SSIS, and even if you can load it up into ADF, I would never recommend it. Most of us wouldn't, because we look and say it's not designed for that well. Choose the right tool for the right job. And so as you start to expand that skill set and look at what's new, it's tough to put your finger on one thing. A lot of it's, where do you want to take your career? But also when you look at your business, what you're doing in your business, are you about to go to the cloud? Well, what does that mean for you? As a data professional or an app dev professional, what don't you know that you need to know? Data professionals, I'll tell you, if you've not worked in the cloud yet, you need to understand networking. Sorry, that's probably the bit, when I look at when we ramped up our team, that was the biggest gap we had to get people over. You had to understand, what does it mean to have an NSG? You have to understand, what are the network security components, because ironically, the network teams are asking you the questions they used to just set up and do. Now they're asking you questions. How do you want to set up your network security? You're like, sure. So look at, the cloud realistically. And in 2021, what's going to be new? It's going to be things like, we're going to see, I think, more of the optimization, like around the Azure workspace and understanding that tool and the new things that are coming out. But we're also going to see even more embracing of, I believe, the open source market on Azure. We're going to see more come to Azure because Microsoft's making that investment to make it more available to us. MySQL, PostgreSQL, those tools, those are just two of the tools I think about. Databricks is an open source technology. Those kind of things are going to continue to become a reality for us, whereas before we were always more closed up. So be ready to expand your horizons, evaluate what's good for what you want to do, try a few things. Don't be afraid to try it. There's a lot of ways to try out these things. We do not recommend setting up Azure Synapse, in a pay-as-you-go account yourself. Just thought we'd throw that out there as a PSA. So a few of us have endured that pain. Let's just go with it.
Yeah, Steve, you talk about networking, and I think that goes back to the security part that I was talking about before, right? So, if you're going to roll these things out and you want to do it in a secure way, you need to understand how they're all going to communicate in a way where, again, it's not just like wide open for everybody to grab a hold of. So I think that says a lot for all the areas that Azure has attempted to sort of fill gaps from a security and an adoption standpoint.
Yeah, one thing to add to that note in 2021, I'm thinking is more of customers, clients are getting into a multi-cloud platform type of stuff as well. So we're seeing a lot of companies, obviously their data estate is so big in the Amazon workspace, right? They have so much of information stored over there. For them to do altogether a migration and then start using Azure is always a long task for them. A lot of investment, cost, and everything. So they might say, hey, you know what, 3Cloud guys, I like Power BI. Can you connect my Power BIs to the AWS system, or it could be any other cloud, and can you build me an analytics platform on top of it? So we're seeing a lot of those type of multi-cloud platforms build across. And it also gives, Microsoft has done an amazing job in having all those connectors established. So now you don't have to be very much tied to a SQL server only, like how we talked about Databricks, we talked about open source. So you can have your information wherever it is, just bring it in and start using the Power BIs or whatever it could be, SQLs or Synapse we talked about.
Shabir and Steve, I'd like to go back to the question that was brought up, because you're bringing up other technology that kind of line up and where it's going from an architectural perspective. So I know SSAS, traditionally was part of the architecture, whether it's multi-dimensional, tabular, whatever it is. But there's a lot of customers are looking for simplicity and maybe not having ADF hitting SQL and having SSAS and having different layers. Instead, maybe considering Synapse and just hitting it directly. I just want to get your thoughts about SSAS as part of the modern data warehouse architecture going forward, and your perceived thoughts on Synapse going forward. Do you think there will be a change to that more direct hit to Synapse to allow the elimination of some architectural components?
I'll take some of that. So I grew my career in analysis services. I think you're trying to hurt me.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I got to keep it a little light. I got to see some smiles on faces. So
yeah.
No, so I'm the one thing that happened in the Synapse GA, and Shabir can double down on this, and Jeff as well, they optimized Synapse for Power BI. That right there, that one move tells you the goal is to eliminate, not totally, but to reduce the necessity of having analysis services be a component in the solution. Let Power BI do it. Now, everybody says, well, Power BI is easy. It isn't. You can, the first 10% of your workload in Power BI, no problem. You want to do Power BI with Synapse and have to, you're going to have to design things. It doesn't take away the work that you put in analysis services. You're shifting that semantic layer to what I feel is a better platform in the long run. Mm-hmm. And we know Microsoft is doubling down and investing in Power BI. We will see analysis services in the future, in my opinion. This is my opinion. Microsoft did not say this, so we're all clear. I got my disclaimer in. We do believe that analysis services in Azure will be rolled up into Power BI because there's no reason for it not to be. At the end of the day, it makes a lot more sense for Power BI to be Microsoft's cloud player. which to your point, Chris, will eliminate the need for adding that layer. That while it technically still exists because you can't really get rid of it, it will be in the same
more
tool
logical than
and
physical
it'll be
at that
more
point.
manageable. So it doesn't feel like you're building a bunch of different things.
Exactly. No, that was the perfect answer. Thank you, Steve.
And I still like multidimensional. So, but that's not,
so do a lot of customers.
Yes. I want to talk to them because I like multi. No, I'm just kidding.
So what?
Go ahead.
No, I was curious. I mean, I think we're all language junkies, right? Like we all love to code in different languages. What do you guys see as, speaking of, the death of MDX, which you're not going to find a bigger fan of that. But what languages are we seeing more? I mean, what languages are your crews using the most, and do you expect them to use the most in the new year?
Yeah, I sorry, Steve, I didn't want to cut you. Yeah, I'm seeing more of the DAX as the more adopted language for the analysis services. So yeah, and it's easy. I mean, at least I'm not saying MDX is not or I'm not comparing anybody over here right now. Okay, I get that. but I'm saying is for a person who is just starting to learn some of the analytical languages, coming from more of a second version of Excel-based type of writing functions and type of things, DAX is much easier to ramp up. So people who are used to some of the averages, sums, things which they use in the Excel version, for them to get started with their DAX is much easier. Now, again, I'm not saying that DAX is not fun. I used to love DAX, MDX and everything before. So I am into that same boat where I love MDX, but again, the trend is more towards the DAX adoption and people learning that more quicker.
So I'm going to do a crossover statement. In the ETL world, and what we're seeing a lot of, we talk a lot about Databricks and such, and we see Python, which you want to frustrate a database or a BI person a lot, you tell them they need to go learn Python. But here's the thing, I have adult children who are learning some coding skills. I tell them, go learn Python, because whether you want to do data science, whether you want to work in application development, you want to do web design, ETL, doesn't really matter what you want to do. That language seems to be everywhere. And I'm interested to hear from Chris and Nick on this. Are you seeing a shift from the traditional powerhouses of C# and Java to the Python world, even in application development, like we're seeing in data, where we're moving from those, and pretty much if we're going to script anything, we should be planning to script it in Python?
I would say it's an addition. It's not a replacement for the 3GL C#, strongly typed, Microsoft backed, language, but it is creeping in significantly, let's say, from one project to another, and sometimes customers will specifically ask for that. But I wouldn't say that it's been a significant encroachment yet. It's been more in addition on my side. Nick, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we saw some trending languages certainly over the past year are things like Python that you mentioned, Steve, and we're seeing some trends in Go as well as Rust. But we're not seeing folks, saying, I want to rewrite my web app, right? And I want to deploy that into app services using, those sorts of things. If people are familiar with languages like JavaScript or PowerShell, certainly you can get a lot of work done in a short amount of time, leveraging those languages in some of the PaaS services. But if you're going to do a lot of heavy lifting and you're going to build an Azure integration services, for example, or a spa website, you're going to use your typical Angular or React front end. You're going to use things like C#, .NET Core, middle tier APIs. You're going to use Azure SQL. Those are tried and true. But things like Go, that's good for cross-platform utilities in some cases, right? We've done as a company, done some PRs into the open source, which is AKS engine, right? That's built on Go, and those sorts of things there. But from a deep Azure perspective and writing and running a bunch of code in Azure, I agree with you, Chris. There's fits here and there where it makes sense, but the large part of at least new modern development in the Azure space anywhere is done, on the .NET platform, or JavaScript and SPA apps and Angular and React and that sort of thing.
And now, oh, sorry, I was going to say, and now with the Power Platform, seeing a lot of requests there. That's if an application's being developed prior, before you move to C# and those things, if the audience is smaller within the organization, often the Power App, specifically the rich canvas-based app, comes up. So lots of growth there, I think, in 2021.
So you're saying no COBOL, no Pascal, no Fortran? Come on.
Oh man, it's been a long time since I touched any COBOL.
Sorry,
but I'm
buddy.
old enough to have done so.
So I'm conscious we have 4 minutes left. I don't know about you guys, but this has been super fun. Yeah, we have a ton of questions out there. Before we do that, I want to make sure that all of those who are listening to us, this water cooler chat, if this is a format you like, please let us know in the survey that comes out after this, because this is something we're just playing around. We're trying to see what makes sense. And so if you did like this format, please let us know that. There are a ton of very specific questions, but I actually want to lead the last 3 minutes. So you're each going to be limited to like 30 seconds. Why Azure over the other platforms? So why Azure over, say, AWS or GCP?
Because it's the best.
That was quick.
Love it, Chris.
I always go back to it's enterprise class with data security. That that's it. When it comes down to security, you're not going to see a better platform.
I will say something in more serious. Just specifically to Amazon, a lot of companies fear eventually competing with Amazon as they continue to gobble up other companies. They think they're safe to build their platform on AWS only to, at some point in the future, have that risk. So Microsoft does not involved in that.
Yeah, I would sort of say pretty much the same what I said before. Microsoft Azure gives you a lot more capabilities across different cloud vendors. So if you have to integrate Azure with some other ones, if you are that journey of migrating or moving to Azure, it gives you a good sort of step 1, step 2 type of thing. And as Chris said, Azure is the best. So can't deny it.
Thank you for backing me, Shabir.
I echo that as well. Yeah.
Yes, I think one thing that definitely gives the Azure space a leg up is the tooling that comes along with it and how integrated that tooling is with things like Azure. So for example, if you're a .NET framework developer and you're in Visual Studio, right? So many things are just, oh, I want to debug this in the cloud. Open Cloud Explorer, right click, debug, right? You're just there in that already. And I know that there are some add-ins and things like that that allow some of the other clouds, to work in a somewhat similar fashion, but there's such tight, if they're first-class citizens, right? It's not a second thought around in that area. So the tooling on the Microsoft stack with the Microsoft tools is exceptional. And I think that really is a way to get where you want to go quicker.
Yep. Hear, hear. Well,
one
Chris,
thing, so just add one more small thing on top of that. So, and I'll end over here, is what I have seen in my many years work with Microsoft is the community presence in Microsoft is immense. So if you are trying to get into Microsoft Azure field, looking on help online or with Microsoft or any other partners, it sort of stands out. So that's the experience I have with Microsoft.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
Absolutely.
All right, Nick, Chris, Steve, Shabir, Noel, thanks for hanging out and talking. Hopefully we could do this again. It would be nice to do this on a regular basis because I've enjoyed it. And we'll see you guys next time. Y'all take care.
Sounds great.
Thanks,
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. And as you guys know, you guys will receive the recording tomorrow in your email box around noon. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to myself or any of these guys on here. Please, thank you so much and have a wonderful Tuesday. Thanks, guys, again. Bye-bye.
Thanks.